on. The session is just is being recorded as of now. You will be on air in 1 minute and 40 seconds. I hope Roberto is gonna be able to join. Hi, Thorsten.
Hi, hello. Can you finally hear and see me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Very good.
Switch off your microphone. Switch off your microphone if you want to keep the cameras, so to avoid any interference during the session. Just open it when Frederick, the moderator, brings you on the floor.
Hello.
I'm gonna.
Welcome.
Okay. I'm gonna switch off. We can hear you.
Can you put on the first slide, please?
You will be we will be on air in 56 seconds. Hi, Roberto. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I'm gonna switch off my camera and microphone. Me and Xavier, the admin, we will be like ghosts, but we will be there to help you. So
yeah, I'm
don't
also
worry.
switching off my camera, and I'll switch off my microphone. Okay.
Frederick, you can choose your slide deck from the slides button.
Oh, yes, I see. Thanks.
Thanks, Marta. Michaela, sorry. Yeah, that's it.
Great.
20 seconds. Good luck.
Okay. Welcome everybody. Make it a nice session.
17 seconds. So you have the countdown on the upper right.
Yes. Okay. Frederick, keep the clock and keep an eye on the text now and then, because I will give you instructions if needed. Okay. Good luck.
So, a very warm welcome, everyone. I'm Fredrik Horstedt. I'm Vice President of Innovation at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden, and I'm a board member of the European Innovation Council. In this session, we will deal with something that we call the EIC Pathfinder Marketplace. It's a concept dedicated to transferring intellectual assets from research into market innovation. And it's a concept that we are currently developing within the EIC. I will be moderating the session, and you in the audience have the opportunity to ask questions, provide us with input that you think we should regard when designing the marketplace. And with us here in the session, we have 3 speakers that will provide their perspectives. We have Ms. Michaela Magas. She is the chair of the Industry Commons Foundation. She is the Innovation and Sustainability Manager of Onto Commons. And she was also awarded the EU Woman Innovator Award in 2017. We have Professor Roberto Cingugliani, who is CTO of Leonardo, large technology corporation in Italy. He was formerly a physicist and researcher, and he's also a former research director of the Italian Institute of Technology, the EIT. We also have Dr. Torsten Lambertus, who managed the AHEAD program, which is the Fraunhofer company builder for high-tech startups. His previous experiences include setting up a business incubator and 2 startup companies as well. A very warm welcome also to our distinguished speakers. Really good to have you here. But before we leave the word to you, let us take a look at the EIC Pathfinder Marketplace concept. And in this slide, just to remind us, we're talking about the EIC Pathfinder program. It was previously named FET, Future Emerging Technologies. It's a European Commission research program. It's challenge-driven. It's at low TRLs, has been ongoing for around 30 years. And the overall idea is that the research results become the basis for emerging technologies. That in turn is the foundation of radical innovation and disruptive startups and scale-ups. And the problem and the potential we've experienced with the Pathfinder program is that many of the intellectual assets of the program remains unexploited. That is, we do not get the full value out of it. And by intellectual assets here, we do not only mean intellectual property, that is IP like patents, but we apply a wider concept and include also data correlations, frameworks, software, technical solutions, instructions, and visualizations. So we focus on the asset side. And of course, we acknowledge that we need to deal properly with intellectual property rights issues to turn those assets into intellectual property, that is IP. And as pointed out here, intellectual assets are often tacit and implicit in the heads of people, or implicit in large structures, software structures, for instance. So we need to capture the assets, we need to make them explicit and describe them before they become what we call transactionable, to be ready to put into a new context closer to the market. And our experience is that the originators, or inventors, if you like, of the intellectual assets, they might not always be the best people or the people that cracks the best market ideas. You can picture it like this, that a person who develops a certain intellectual assets, he or she discovers a piece of Lego. And I mean like the Danish toy, Lego, that you can build stuff with. Inventing one piece is great, but it's still only one piece. And all of us, having played around with Lego, knows that you need more pieces, and you got to have an idea of what to build. So we need more people, perspectives, and tools to generate market opportunities, knowing how to combine intellectual assets. Another aspect is that these assets are created over a long time period and by many different people and projects, which make it more tricky for us. And sometimes it takes many years or even decades before the time is right and a particular asset gets relevant. And then we have the kind of combination potential that I described. And let us all note that this potential is, of course, much wider than the Pathfinder program. It can include many, many different types of asset pools from other research programs, from large companies, small companies, RTOs, or other pools as well. So what we need is something of a marketplace. We need somehow to expose, showcase, and transact intellectual assets and bring them closer to the market. We need somehow to link buyers and sellers on this market. And importantly, the Pathfinder Marketplace is in fact work in progress. So we know that there are some similar concepts out there. We also know that their coverage is actually not so big. So we are currently on the lookout for features, success factors, tips and tricks to get as good concept as possible. And in this panel, we can present our ideas and learn from you, the speakers, and you, the audience. And before we leave the floor to Michaela, I would like to encourage everyone to use the chat function to provide input that you think is helpful to us, and also questions, of course, for the Q&A session that will follow. We can't handle all questions in the panel, but we can handle some. So with that, a warm welcome once again, and I leave the word and 8 minutes, only 8 minutes to Michaela. What
Sure.
is a successful marketplace? Michaela, please go ahead.
Thank you. And with your permission, I will remove your slides and try and insert mine. So let's hope that our system does the correct thing. So here we go. You wish it always worked this smoothly. So basically, thank you for this opportunity to actually share some of the ideas with you, because we have been testing some of these systems for a while in our sandboxes and test beds. And there are some aspects that we have found that really work. So I will be very short, because I have 3 main sort of areas that we need to look at. What do we need for a successful EIC marketplace? The first thing is to register all intellectual property in a chain. This can be done before it's patented. This can be done with fresh ideas, which can be done also with reporting. So for instance, what we can do is back register all of the wonderful results from the Future Emerging Technologies program since the 1990s, which are actually sitting there in reporting, but nobody can get to it. And we could have, and we very likely do have, fantastic inventions and fantastic results, new materials, for example, that could now be used in a new context, because perhaps the price for producing them has dropped, the market is ready, or there are new use cases and conditions which would allow them to be used. When we describe intellectual property, and in this morning's session in the Industry Commons, I did compare the intellectual property to data itself. I mean, when we are turning intellectual property into data, it does become data. And it also described the data sets as intellectual property that we also is very closely linked. We can think of it the same as with a music file. In the music industry, this has been dealt with for the last 20 years already. It's a huge experience that we can learn from. And basically, we use metadata at the front end to describe what's inside. And then in a chain, of course, in a distributed chain, we can use it with a timestamp, we can hash it with a user identifier, and we can link it to further documentation. And of course, what we want to do is link it to the whole FAIR data system. So findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So everything that we register works effectively with the same set of parameters that we decide as a, this is coming very much from the research community. There are projects that most of the people present are aware of that are looking at the parameters for FAIR data. We need to use a reliable infrastructure. It's no point launching a European project that will then finish at certain point and the funding will stop, and then the railway tracks will be dismantled. We need to all run off the same railway tracks. So ideally, because there are marketplaces for data and for intellectual property being built elsewhere, i.e. in industry, industrial research with Industry Commons, or in the EOSC, European Open Science Cloud, we should actually look at the standard for the railway tracks, and we could use existing systems that are already in place by well-supported organizations such as, for instance, the Max Planck Institute's Blocksberg, which is already being used by our colleagues at Fraunhofer FIT, and it's a distributed chain for registration of research IP, which is now basically maintained by, I think it's around 30 reputable academic and research institutions globally. Of course, what we want to end up with is an intellectual property space where research and industry and innovation, the EIC, benefit from spillover effects, because we want to combine these areas of intellectual property together. And then the long-term objective is, on top of this infrastructure, to build value-adding applications so that we can actually search for comparisons or combinations of intellectual property. We can use simulations for new use cases, or for instance for materials modeling, so we can test drive what is in there in new use cases. And we can add features such as market indexing, or we can adjust IP values depending on the type of use. So where Frederick has mentioned Lego bricks, this is a very nice example, because for instance, in a marketplace, an 8-pin Lego brick would be a low price because it is high volume, whereas a Lego wing for an aircraft is a specific item that is needed for specific use cases and therefore can have a higher price. So again, it's subject to regular market forces. So that's from me in short. I hope I'm within my time, and I will leave it to other speakers to add more to this discussion. Thank you.
So Michaela, thanks a lot. And even if you in the audience cannot see all the comments you make yet, we are dealing with this with the chat moderator. I see that we have some very good suggestions here. Katrine, you post that we already have tools that is similar, like the Innovation Radar. That's a very good aspect. We need to incorporate that. We don't need a structure for its own sake, a new one. We should rely on existing initiatives if they are available. So we will take that further. And also we have a comment from Julia, and it kind of coincides with the point I raised initially. If we do not limit this to the Pathfinder only, but enclose other pools, other asset generating initiatives, then we can have a stronger kind of volume effect where we have a stronger critical mass and a stronger attraction. Very good, and thanks for engaging in the audience, and thank you so much, Michaela, for your perspective. In the interest of time, we save our comments and questions for later, and without further ado, I leave the word to Roberto, and I would like to ask you, from the standpoint of research on large tech, large corporations, what do you see are the key features of a successful marketplace? Roberto, please go ahead.
Thank you, Frederick. Hello, everybody. Company-wise, I think we're watching at the very non-uniform landscape at European level. I think I would like to stress mainly 3 points that as high-tech company we are experiencing on a day-by-day basis. For sure, the first one has to do with the education, the preparation of the new generations and their attitude towards research and innovation in the digital era. I believe that we need a strong effort in Europe for disseminating the proper knowledge and educating the young generation of innovators in understanding how important is the pipeline that goes from the idea to the technology transfer. I mean, if you see in most countries in Europe, research and academic career are not so tuned towards technology development. I mean, to make it easy, sometimes a relatively relevant publication is evaluated by far more than the development of a new technology or a very solid IP, non-process related IP, but new ideas that are protected. And I think this needs an effort at the education level. And I would dare to say that we should start creating the mind of innovation in the young generation since the age of 6. You don't start making this sport at the age of 18. Innovation starts when you're really very, very young. And the native digitals demonstrate that this is really the case, even though these are self-made innovators. So institutions and even companies should collaborate, public and private should collaborate to boost dissemination, creating the culture of innovation. And this is something very serious. We need this culture for the future, especially now that digital and AI made everything much faster. So in the past, the pace of new technology was relatively slow, let's say a few decades. So the society could adapt. We had time to reshape the production system, the education system, family and social behavior. Now, on a timescale of 5 years, things are so changed that companies simply cannot update themselves in real time. Society struggling following the change. So we need to start operating on the young generation. The second issue I wanted to stress, as from the point of view of the company, even though I am a former university professor, so somehow I keep with me this academic passion, it is that today high-performance computing, data, what we call big data, as well as algorithms, are just getting together. I mean, we should talk about cloud computing. We need infrastructures. It's very interesting to see that Europe produces something like a zettabyte of data every year, so an immense amount of data. I mean, Italy produces about 1/5 of that. So we produce a lot of data, possibly not all of them useful. But the funny thing is that if you see the number of floating point operation per person or the number of megabyte per person in different countries of Europe, this number may vary by a factor of 3 to 4. So it's a very inhomogeneous situation. If you want to have a strong continent, this should be by far more homogeneous. There are countries, there are nations in Europe who were preparing this transition on due time. Others are very late. And this will not help Europe to be uniformly competitive. And I think we should think about that. By the way, connected to the availability of digital infrastructures and to a proper educational pathway, I think we should develop in our innovation community the so-called lateral thinking. I like to say, I mean, I'm personally, when I was in IIT, we collected a portfolio of 900 patents, and we made about 20 companies in 10 years. Leonardo has 5,000 patents. It's a very big company. What I'm sure now, I'm convinced, the point is that we often have solutions for problems we still don't know. So somebody should help innovators to find links that cannot be seen at first glance. So we do have ideas protected in fields that maybe will never take off, but we ignore that the same ideas could resolve problems in completely different areas. Anyway, very important. So who brings in this lateral thinking, this cross-disciplinarity? That's the main question. That is what we should do. And finally, my third point was very practical. We should shorten the pathway towards innovation. So from the idea protection into the, let's say, investor involvement, we should help the inventors, the innovators, academic or industrial, doesn't matter, to accelerate the process. What I developed in IIT, and it worked very well, I created a small fund that was called the de-risking fund, reducing the risk. That was essentially meant to accelerate the transition from TRL3 to TRL6. Okay, this is very indicative, which means sometimes you get an invention and you get an inventor with a very nice prototype, this one still with tape, coils, not really attractive for an investor, but the idea is good. And then this inventor just needs a trigger, just needs a little amount of money and a little help in product engineering to make this prototype by far more appealing, by far more robust, and then the investors will come. I had this experience on about 40 patents that were essentially de-risked, so risk reduction by specific funding. And the typical fund was 200,000 euro per year, was not that big, was not venture capital, okay? And 1/3 of those generated new companies. So we should help innovators in accelerating their pathway towards a transfer of the technology they invented. I think these three things together should help Europe to be more competitive in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Roberto. And I actually counted 4 important aspects. The first and closest one, translational thinking, a combination of intellectual assets across different disciplines to find innovative ideas. That's really at the core here. And then you put this into the context of availability of digital infrastructure, shortening the pathway to innovation. And shortening the pathway to innovation by de-risking is really to inspire older people to a culture of innovation or sustained innovation and entrepreneurship. And that's really the 4th point, that it's a mindset, way of living, and we should really bring that on very early in our careers, from 6 years and onwards. Very good. I see that there is a lot of things ongoing in the chat. Thanks so much for now, Roberto. And it's time for our next speaker, Torsten. If I ask you like this, if you tap into the challenges and learnings from the AHEAD program, what are the most important implications for the marketplace? Torsten, please.
Thank you very much. So my mission for the past 7 years here at Fraunhofer, a very big research organization with 28,000 people, 74 institutes, was to build up technology transfer programs and company building programs. And this resulted into what is now the Central Tech Transfer Program and will become a central operating system of the Fraunhofer Society, the AHEAD program. And out of this platform that was about offline workshops, training, coaching, and stuff like that, and a lot of matchmaking, a new marketplace resulted that I want to talk about, this digital layer. So let me give you a quick introduction of AHEAD. So it's more a co-creation platform, which means that we support 80, 90 projects per year, meaning there's research coming from Fraunhofer Institute, inventors that want to commercialize their technologies, and our goal is to support them in building entrepreneurial teams, founding teams around these projects, and help them to find the right application field and help them to find the right path to market, either via licensing deals with incumbent firms or by spinning off new companies. And so on this path that can, throughout the AHEAD program, can last 2 months or up to 2 years, depending on the maturity and the go-to-market strategy of the single project. Of course, we need a lot of Lego bricks as well to complement what we are doing throughout the program. This might be a corporate that is validating that there's a viable market. There might be an investor who is willing to take the risk and invest into a new spin-off. There's co-founders who have the entrepreneurial experience already and can join the team of researchers that we are supporting through the program. And of course, at the core is a lot of technologies, inventions, IP from Fraunhofer Institutes that are supporting this matchmaking. And you can imagine if you're supporting 80, 90 projects per year, you need a lot of people, a lot of staff in order to do the matchmaking right. And we're talking about projects ranging from life sciences to cybersecurity, new materials, you name it. So out of this need to become more efficient, we started a marketplace, a digital layer for the AHEAD program. So this is the starting point. It's still under development, but we have our first prototype online for a couple of weeks and months. You will find it on next.fraunhofer.de. And what you can see there is just a list of all the incubated projects that are part of the AHEAD program. And in the future, there will be way more right now. And there's a nice overview. You can filter by industry tags. You can filter by technology tags, by phase, how mature is it. And you can have a glimpse once one-sentence pitch and get your mind around, is that interesting for me? On the left-hand side, you will see a lot of other features that we build in, which has nothing to do with the marketplace idea behind that. If we deep dive into one of the projects, everyone can find a one-pager. So all these one-pagers are publicly available. Anyone who goes to the website could find them. So one project example that you see right here is a 3D printing technology, a very great project. You can see directly the tech transfer path, so it's easy to see it's a spin-off. And then you find also some text that help you to figure out, is that part of my needs? But of course, in the long run, that will also make it searchable. So we'll come to that point later. It's very important from my perspective, not to have just a database, but to have an intelligent connection via this digital layer. And you can find some description of the project, about the technology, about the market application opportunities, and the team backing the project. And just an easy example of the matchmaking, you can register on the platform as a co-founder. As a co-founder, you put in your name, you put in the verticals and technologies of your interest. Why are you interested in co-founding a new company based on high technology? What is the time, your personal runway until you want to be ready to create a company? And based on that, we can intelligently match that to our portfolio of ahead teams and then start an initial matchmaking. And you can initiate that via Connect Me, and we will help and support manually. But in the future, actually, this should be a very automatized process without much of manual work from the team overhead behind that. So this was based on this need of this matchmaking with corporate co-founders, we started this software project, this marketplace, and we will develop it further. And from my perspective, there's some key things you should think about when you start a marketplace, and they are listed right here. So in general, it's as with any project and innovation, you should be crystal clear about the purpose and the use case that you want to address versus building the jack of all trades. So the options of how you build this marketplace are abundant, but at the end of the day, you need to solve certain problems, right? And for us, it was concrete innovation projects that were looking for other Lego bricks. So I'm a big supporter of not having just a database of a lot of different projects, but having the possibility to support matchmaking, this lateral thinking, to find applicants of a certain technology you would have never thought of as Fraunhofer and as the ahead team and the people inside the project. But there's somewhere on the planet who has an idea what to do with the technology that is brand new for us. So first of all, clearly define the use case and the target audience. Our one-pagers are written for VCs, corporates, people who already are looking for very specific industry techs, who have a sweet spot where they invest, where they want to find innovation, and that is what that platform is for. If you're looking for maybe very creative processes, how you can connect different IP and technologies for certain new use cases, this might be a wrong way to describe the projects, right? So what kind of information, what language you use, from my perspective, is very important, depending on the use case and the target audience. And then, of course, if you're looking EU-wide, this could be growing like an Amazon or like a Google, of course. But you should start with quality first, with a very niche focus of such a platform. And maybe in the long run, you're able to have a comprehensive search of all the available IP and many European research organizations. But maybe it's smart to start with quality and some very highly curated and selected projects. But then the question comes to the mind: how do you curate? What are the dimensions that are important? How do you define quality? And who is going to do that curation if you want to focus on quality? And this is a big challenge, the more potential you can tap into with your marketplace. And at the end of the day, I think also for a starting point, having critical masses is very important. You can have a marketplace with 100 players that is not working at all, and you can have a marketplace with 100 players that is working quite well, because with their roles, they're highly complementary, meaning there's researchers, there's investors, there's corporates, but they are all interested in, for example, life sciences. And so this might be a very, very viable marketplace already for just 100 companies. Whereas if they are very diverse in what they're looking for and what kind of technologies and verticals they're interested in, you could have 1,000 and nothing is actually happening. And the third point I would like to make is how to embed this digital layer into existing processes. Today, corporates, research organizations, co-founders, they are working in personal networks, and this is how they meet each other. And the way we build digital products should tie in with these processes. We don't need to try to change the behavior of people too much and expect them that we right now go to the platform, to the marketplace like every day and are searching for new technologies that are popping up. This is not what we are used to when we are going to an Amazon or whatever marketplace we are used to today, which are way easier products to sell than this complex game of IP and technology transfer. So how do you create attention? How do you make sure that the right people are part of the platform and you get regular updates of new technologies and regular updates of new opportunities? How do you solve, and I think this is the major challenge for every new marketplace, how do you solve the chicken and egg problem, that you have the right starting point, the right players, and so it ties in nicely with how they are used to work usually. So for us, I always get the question from VCs, what do you have as great ahead projects in the field of X? And out of this need of, I cannot answer you from the top of my head what projects we have, we started to, let's create a database. And once we have this database, let's put text on it. And once the VC is able to put in his tag on the marketplace, it's easy for him to search without us being kind of the middleman for that. So having said that, I think these are, apart from many technical and other challenges, very concrete issues that we are facing, and what we are thinking about when we are looking at how to develop this marketplace further ahead. Thank you for your attention.
You obviously catalyzed a lot of thoughts with the audience. We have quite a lot of stuff in the chat column right now. And can I once again encourage the participants to post any questions you have in the chat? And we will now move on to the Q&A session that will last for 11 minutes or so. And just to kick off the Q&A, I have a question for you, Michaela, but I just would like to summarize what we have been discussing in the chat until this point. Strategic positioning of our marketplace, very well put by Torsten. Use cases and target audiences defines the kind of focus or center of attention in a marketplace, pool of intellectual assets. We have incentives issues. We know that we have aspects of, well, it takes a lot of time and sometimes also monetary fund to engage in a marketplace like this. How can we pull or attract downstream actors and researchers as well? We have a kind of tools discussion ongoing, where it's obviously that we need perhaps some AI tools, but also HI tools, human intelligence tools, to achieve the translational dimension that Roberto pointed at. One thing relates to the volume effect or the scale, Michaela. We have a lot of initiatives. We mentioned ahead, open air, industry commons, aligning initiatives. If we should do that, is a natural role for the Commission. We do that, do you think?
I love when great minds think alike. I hope we are all great minds in this session. It's absolutely what I was thinking when I was looking at all the comments and with all of the presentations. We can't work in isolation. We would be shooting ourselves in the foot. And of course, the EIC is at the very front user end. So it's a very appropriate vehicle to be developing an IP tracker system for all of the intellectual property that exists within all of the European programs. So you mentioned open air, that's part of EOSC. Open air has got a particular function. EOSC is defined as the web of fair data. And in fact, the fair data parameters are being very much defined by communities involved in EOSC and communities which are part of FAIR's FAIR or the RDA, Research Data Association. So if we leave EOSC with the task of developing the web of fair data, the findability and aspect in particular. And in industry commons, we are looking at semantic interoperability, which is a major challenge between different domains, which is also absolutely key to a common platform. Then the EIC has got this front end, the user end to solve, which is, how do we identify the right applications and use case scenarios for intellectual property that's being generated. So I think we should really look at how to interact with all of the other players that are developing this system, and it's a European system at the end of the day.
Yeah, very good. Thanks a lot. So then we kind of stumble into standardization issues. If we don't communicate meta tag in a similar way, then we cannot get in-depth visibility into our pools, right? And just a follow-up question, would it be so that we should do this to the full extent, or would that be to take the long way around, do you think?
Basically, industry commons is looking at creating standards for semantic interoperability across the domain. So this is very much a big mission, and we should, of course, all benefit from those. In the same way that fair data is being also defined as a set of standards by EOSC, and this is also being worked on. So we are working on several of these aspects simultaneously, and the standards are progressing. But at the user end, I think no one has better expertise than the EIC. So also standards there need to be worked on.
Very good. And I just pick up a chat comment also, pointing at the potential leadership role of EIC in this context. It would be natural to work with EIC as a kind of pan-European actor leading the way, but also being quite humble, I think, to all the good practices that are out there and learn from them and try to pick them up. It's the ultimate win-win game, it seems. Thanks a lot, Michaela. I have a question for you, Torsten. I think it's very exciting what you bring up. It's the kind of strategic positioning of this marketplace. You cannot be the jack of all trades, as you say. And I was thinking about the Fraunhofer experiences. Have you managed to strike this balance in the AHEAD program, do you think? And if so, how did you do it? How did you go about finding that balance? Please.
Well, I don't think we have found it yet, right? But this is why we started small, and we are thinking about how to add new products. What are new ways of presenting more of the variety of what Fraunhofer has to offer in order to enrich this marketplace and make it attractive for even more players? But as I said, it came from this very concrete product where this is a spin-off or a licensing project. But now you could think of maybe IP that is in a way earlier stage than very close to commercialization. You could think to competencies in general. And so this is what we're trying to understand. What are the natural next steps to grow this platform from a part? What are the right offerings and the right products? But I think it is necessary, and I've seen that in many examples in the Fraunhofer context, but also apart from that if you just put something online, it doesn't necessarily mean that anyone that this is resonating with anyone out there. So as with any startup, and such a marketplace is like a startup, start small and choose wisely what are the next steps. And it's a trial and error, and that's the path that we are going as well.
And also picking up a question from the chat from Lars Frölund at MIT. He poses the question of what the business case, the overall business case for the marketplace would be. What would you say from a Fraunhofer perspective? What is the business case of the...
So what is the business case? I think what it basically does is supports the business case for Fraunhofer of the Fraunhofer Society, which is commercializing technologies. And so at the end of the day, if you look at a marketplace in scale, it helps you to tap into a target group that you would otherwise not be able to tap into, or it would be much harder. So it's more like a sales channel that enhances what we are already doing. So from my perspective, this is the business case behind that.
Excellent. So I just note the similarity between the business case of Fraunhofer and the potential business case of the EIC, which is also a place where we like to build companies, of course. So interesting similarity. Let's bring that with us further on. Thanks a lot, Torsten. And if I turn to you, Roberto, I think that you, like myself, have learned a lot from this discussion. If you think back on, or if you consider your role as CTO of Leonardo, patent portfolio of 5,000 patents, and for sure you have intellectual assets with a multiple number higher than that. If you consider the need for translational thinking at Leonardo, what are the key takeaways for your part from this session?
Well, at this stage, I think there are three enabling factors. The first one is people. We just launched them. We are creating now the new corporate R&D laboratories. It's a large-scale investment for the next 10 years. And just to give you an example, we made a call for 70 young researchers, and we got 1,000 applications from all over the world. So that is a symptom that there is not only demand, but also need for innovation. So people first. The second, needless to say, is strong digital infrastructuring. Next week, we will install our sub-exaflop machine. It was mandatory for a high-tech company that's building aircraft, the satellites, stuff like that, to go towards digital twins of all technologies, to have very high computational power, very fast and efficient data analytics. And so, unfortunately, this is a race that you win with strong investments. No way, you have to invest. It's a big commitment, not only money, but also people, as I said. So it's just a way to accept the radical digital transformation of the high-tech products. And finally, I think, which is possibly the most difficult, to create an environment. So you can have the best infrastructure, you can have a lot of money, but if you don't have the mindset towards transformation, just accepting the fact that what was new 7 years ago now is very old. If you don't have the mindset to accept the challenge of the change, well, you will never be competitive. And this kind of mindset, I mean, it's somehow a paradox, but I think we need a little bit of humanities even in the science and technology education. That I'm a physicist, you know. It's strange to hear a physicist saying that we need humanities, but in some sense, this is really a philosophical approach to technological culture. I would say that if we play very well the next decade, this is a sort of renaissance in which you really recombine disciplines that we're never talking over the last 50 years. I mean, I really just want to provoke people, but everybody's claiming about the need of a regulation for artificial intelligence, or people are claiming the needs of regulation for embodiment of technologies in the human body, like active prosthetics, or ethics in technology. Now, the question is, who's going to do this? A philosopher, an engineer, a physicist, a medical doctor? So clearly, the vertical specialist, the vertical discipline, at least at very basic innovation level, has to disappear. People have to sit around the table and they have to share. And somehow one day you will have a clear picture only if the philosopher, the engineer, the physicist, the medical doctor will be open enough to listen to the other and to make to draw a conclusion. I think this is important to create the environment.
Very good. It reminds us, Roberto, that a lot of the easy problems are solved and the more complex ones remain. And you really point out the need for natural sciences, engineering sciences to go alongside social sciences and humanities to solve these extra tough problems. And I can also see in the chat that we are getting some kind of big mind macro type of comments as you go along. Surely that's
By the way, Fredrik, I'm sorry for interrupting, but you know, I was living and working in Germany for many years, so I was very fond of what Torsten has shown before from Fraunhofer. I was in Max Planck, But anyway, this is somehow I'm feeling. And I think what Thorsten has demonstrated is that you need also somebody who translate and create the link. And what they are doing is fundamental, because they are translating things. If they are not translated, it becomes very difficult for different communities to get the value of the discoveries. And this is also the first step of humanity that we are introducing into the innovation pathway.
Dear friends, thanks a lot. Thanks for putting people at the center and the context of people around people, Roberto. It's one very important aspect if we try to sum up this panel, because we are now closing in at the very end. We have we have scratched quite deeply, I would say, at the surface of the marketplace concept in the discussions here. We have also received some very thoughtful comments and more questions in the chat. We will bring them with us in further work. We have identified many important aspects of a successful marketplace. If we look at some of them, the volume effect, the importance to gather critical mass, a big enough pool of assets in particular areas that reaches a critical mass that will allow for a strong enough traction to gather actors, use cases, strategic positioning. It's clear that we will have to find a way to cope with the fragmentation of our innovation ecosystems to scale this concept. We need to reach out to other similar initiatives like Industry Commons, Open Air, and we need to engage with them in standardized ways. And the role of the EIC, I think, is very interesting and important as well. It's similar to Fraunhofer, having a clear interest in venture building. And by that means, you manage to kind of calculate positively the business case of the AHEAD program. And then it makes all sense to strategically position that. And I would also just like to point out that strong incentives are really needed, because engaging in a marketplace like this is time consuming, and we would like to ensure that actors yield a significant payback when they make this investment. So today we got glimpses of how to tackle all these challenges. I would like to thank you so much for participating in the panel. Speakers and audience, thanks for your contributions. And I wish also to thank Walter van der Velde at the EIC Pathfinder unit, who has been the overall coordinator and also chat moderator from the Commission side. So it has been very exciting and useful. Again, thanks so much for your contributions and for your valuable time. Thank you, and take care.
Thanks, all of you.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.